So I'm going to show you a demonstration of some of the ways I use video editing software. I'm going to show you two types. I'll show you one for longer videos where you can do a little bit more, and the platform I'll be using is Wondershare Filmora. And then I'll show you some quick editing that you can do in Canva, which I use for shorter videos or for things that don't need too much. So this is Wondershare Filmora. Currently, I don't have a video in there, and I'll show you what I do step by step. I'm going to show you around it first, though, because regardless of which app you use, the tools are generally very similar. So here at the bottom is my timeline. That's the area you'll be working with the most. And you'll see on the timeline, I currently have two tracks. Treat these as layers, so you can layer tracks on top of each other. One has got an audio icon, so here I can put an audio file in here, and one is a video icon, so that's where I'd put my video. But as I'll show you, as I add different elements to it, I actually create further tracks so that my video track is one whole track, then any elements that I add is another track, and I'll show you why that's important. The other area to really look at is the sizing of your video. So just here where you can see a black box, that's where you can see the preview of any video I put in here. But the sizing really matters depending on the platform or the medium that you're using. So if I go to File and Project Settings, it gives me a few different options. Currently it's set to widescreen, and this is the default for places like YouTube. But let's say I wanted to post this on Instagram as a reel, then I would change this to portrait. I'd always recommend having a look at the recommended sizes for each platform. Now, what I'll do is I'll pretend this is for YouTube, so I can show you what I do with slightly longer videos, and then I'll show you what I do for the shorter videos, things like reels. So I've kept that the same. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to drag and drop the video that I've already recorded to go in here. Okay, so I've dropped a video in there, one that I recorded externally, so I didn't record this in Wondershare Filmora itself. And the first thing I'm going to do is drag and drop it into my timeline. And I'm very intentionally choosing the track that is labeled number 1 and that's for video. So now that's in there. So ignore the subscribe little icon that I've got in the corner because I actually edited that elsewhere. Now, when I press play, it shows me the preview. So the first thing that I use very heavily is this split tool, and you'll have this in all video editors. So what this does, if I press it, it actually splits that video. So let's imagine that I just want to delete the intro. I could delete that, or I could change the order. I could do lots of different things with it. One of the other apps that I use on my phone for shorter videos is called iMovie. And I use the split function a lot because I'll refer to my notes in between. And to avoid that jerkiness when you've split something and then it just continues playing, you can use something like transitions. So if I click on transitions right now, let's imagine that I wanted this second clip, this clip that I've split, to fade in. All I do is I drag and drop that into the right place. Okay, you can see that it's gone on top of that part. So let me play this so you can see what it looks like. So you can see that it faded out, it faded in, and you can use different transitions in different ways. So I'll show you an example of something I did using iMovie for an Instagram reel. So this is something that's in Canva. I've put it in Canva after editing it. And if I press play, you'll see what I mean. So did you see that? There was a quick transition instead of there being this kind of jerkiness if I just tried to continue with that video. You can do either or, it doesn't matter, but I quite like that polished look of having a transition. Okay, so the one that you're going to use the most is probably going to be split because that's where you break up that video to get rid of any mistakes you might have made or anything you want to get rid of. Say with things like the Tutors Mastermind, when I edit the training videos, I just trim the beginning and the end and that's it. So I don't really do anything else. But if you're creating a video for somewhere like YouTube and it's a longer video, you really need to make it engaging so that people can follow along really easily. And that's where things like stickers and effects come in. So if you look at these stickers, Wondershare gives me a variety of ones. And I'll just add a random one in here for now. So when I click on that, you can see it shows me a preview. And again, all I do is I drag it into the timeline. Now, this time what I've done is I've created a new track. And this is what I meant by layering elements on top of each other. Because let's say, for example, I wanted this element, you can see it there, to show up for YouTube, but I didn't want it to show up for Instagram. I can simply hide just that track. So now I don't have to edit my entire video again. I just use that same video and add different elements and edit it differently. So you can hide tracks, and that's why it's important to actually layer and use tracks. Now, when you are thinking about adding elements, try and think of it as a way to help your watcher follow your material as opposed to trying to make your video look fancy. Because if you try and add too many effects, it can get really distracting. So a common thing that I use are titles. I've just clicked on the titles menu from the top. Here's an example. So I often use that one to just tell people what I'm talking about so they can follow along, because sometimes people are watching, but they're not necessarily consuming every single word. And again, all I do is I put that there in a separate track, and I can position it wherever I want. When I click on it, double click on it, I can change the text there. So this is 3 ways to use Instagram. You can change things like the color, the font, the size. So if I click on it there, I can actually change the size of the text. If I click on the yellow part, I can change the style of that. I can move it around. So that's quite an important element of when you are actually recording your video. Try and think to yourself, where do I actually want to add elements? If you want to add it below your face, then leave some kind of gap there. You can see here, you can see the top half of my body. If, however, you wanted things to the side or above your head, leave a gap there as well. My best recommendation is to record videos from a little bit further away, because you can easily crop bits out that you don't want. So if I wanted to put this, let's say, to the side, and I didn't want to put anything at the bottom, I could actually crop this video. So I press crop. I'm going to click custom, and I could just get rid of that bit, for example. Okay, so try and give yourself enough raw material to work with. That makes editing much easier. Okay, so when you're editing, you can add these different elements. And just like I said, try and use it to control the message that's going out there rather than trying to make your video look too fancy. So because I've used this particular title, I would keep it consistent and I would use that throughout. Another thing that's a really good thing to do when you're creating videos where you're saying something like, here are 3 top tips to do X, Y, and Z, is to kind of create covers so that you're introducing the next part of what you're about to talk about. So for example, you could see that I could use that every time I'm about to introduce a brand new tip. Again, it just helps people follow along and it drives core messages home. So these are the basics that I'm going to go as far as with video editing, because once you get to grips with these basics, then you'll be able to use more advanced features because you will naturally have the confidence to just explore, or you'll have something in mind and you'll Google how to do it and you'll work it out that way. But the main things that you're likely to use is the split function, where you can split that track. I'd recommend using various tracks, and I would recommend using things like titles to just control the messaging that you're emphasizing. Now for Canva. Okay, so on Canva, you can't do really advanced things, but you can do certain things. So I'm going to drag and drop. Well, actually, I'm just going to click a video. So that's a video that I already had recorded. And actually, you can record in Canva. I think I recorded this one in Canva. Now, the first thing I do is I crop out the bits I don't want. So I'm going to crop out that black bit and I'm going to resize it. Now, at the moment, and depending on when you're watching this and what kind of update Canva gives you, at the moment, they have automatic captions. When I post for social media, I use an app on my phone called Captions. So when you download this, you just right click and you make sure you hide captions. And that way, when you press play, they won't show up anymore. So you can see there are no captions there. If I say show captions, this is what it looks like. So on Canva, the main things you can do is you can click on edit video and you can change the look of it. Okay, so I could add a filter, for example. You can also crop the video. So you can't quite split it, although there is a different way to split it, but it doesn't work quite so well in my experience, but you can crop it. So let's say, for example, I wanted to take all of that out and I wanted my video to start at this point, I could do that. You can also add animations. But if I want to use animations to control the messages that I want to put forward, and I want to decide when they appear and when they disappear, then Canva doesn't quite work like that. You would need to use a video editing platform. So I hope that's helped you just get to grips with the basics of video editing. I know I haven't gone into loads of detail, but quite honestly, the way you can reduce the time it takes to edit is by having a really good original video. So watch my video on how to create a good quality video so that you can minimize how much editing you need to do. I'll be talking about things like lighting and camera position.